let's start out talking about childhood trauma and why trauma in childhood has such teeth. Why the ACOA syndrome can so easily become a post-traumatic stress syndrome in which pain that happens in childhood repeatedly over time can go underground and reemerge in adult relationships. What is learned in a family gets played out in another family. But that pain, because of the way the body-mind processes trauma, can go underground and get triggered by what caused it to begin with, by a reminiscent stimuli. The stimuli would be relationships. Partnering and parenting would be the closest thing to being a child of a parent when it comes to re-stimulating pain in adult relationships. Why is home such a potent environment for being traumatized? There are lots of factors. Let's look at them visually. Could this won't be a piece of work, but could I get some volunteers, just one person who's good at being on their knees to represent a child? Anybody, come on up. A couple of people to be parents, yeah. You're the person with good knees. Bring something up to put under your knees if you like. Okay.
Yeah, you're already going to be your child.
Great.
Okay.
Couple of parents. Stand here. Another sibling or two, just come on up. Parent, sibling. So how about, are you good with your knees too?
I'm good on my bottom.
That'll work. That'll work. So what do we see here? This is a home, right? There is a fundamental power imbalance, right? The child is dependent on the parent for everything. The parent has the keys to the car, to the house, to the bank account, to the refrigerator. These kids need to keep it right with these parents in order to stay safe, in order to grow up. So they're going to do what they need to do to stay connected, because otherwise, where would they go? What are some of the factors that sear childhood trauma into place? Can I ask you parents to stay here just right about there for visuals so this group can see? What kind of access do they have to outside support? Outside support can buffer trauma, can make something less traumatizing. But the small child in the home can have little access to outside support. It's why if you've got neighbors, if you're on a block, all of that helps. Just a place to go to get out of the intense heat of living with a dysfunctional family that feels chaotic to the child. The way this child processes trauma, processes scary experiences, is very dependent on their level of development. Now, this child's a little older than this child, so this child's going to understand trauma, what happens that's scary, a little differently from the way the younger child. And as this child grows up, again, it's going to be different. And as this child grows up, it's going to be different. A baby is born with a fully developed amygdala, which means that a baby can have a fully developed stress response, which is why when a child's in the arms and they hear a door slam or something, you see that flail response. Or when a baby cries, you think the world is coming down. Babies can experience stress fully, but they cannot modulate that stress. They don't know how anxious to be or what's scaring them. They are completely dependent on these parents to help them understand that. These parents act as external modulators to the stress of this child, which is why after you've raised children, you keep rocking for a couple of years, even after they start walking, because you're so used to it. It's why you rock flour in the supermarket line. It's why, we've all done it. Because this is what we do with our children. We rock them. We know, animals know how to do this. We lick them, we coo, we bring them back into a balanced emotional state. Through our bodies, through touch, through sound. Highly sensorial. Children learn through their senses. If we don't touch them and coo to them and sing to them, they don't know we're communicating with them. Because if we just talk to them at a distance through words, those words don't make sense until they take them in. They learn language from a very young age, but children need us touching them. They need us rocking them. They need our physical presence. And that, as this rocking happens, they become wired for emotional regulation, neurological regulation. A child's head is so big at birth that they cannot fully develop. A mother couldn't carry a child with a fully developed nervous system. She couldn't deliver a child. So lots of that neural growth takes place outside of the womb. It's marsupial mothering, right? It's why you don't want to miss these developmental stages. Because that's when this child learns not what it means to balance emotions. That's our task when we're adults and people are out of balance. We have to tell them what it's like to balance emotions. And it's why guided imagery is so good, because it's so soothing. They learn what it feels like. They develop a felt sense of where that balance point is. And that's what we try to teach them in recovery, a felt sense of where that balance point is. That's what I try to do in the model, is create many little circumstances, you'll see it later, where emotions can get triggered, can get bigger, can freeze, can make you uncomfortable. Then you say something about them, then you hear somebody say something about theirs, then you reach out to somebody and touch them, and the emotion gets a little smaller, a little less threatening. And you learn how to balance, as an adult, emotions by feeling them, sitting with them, translating them into words so that they can be elevated to a conscious level and thought about, and then shared. It becomes relational. This is relational. If you had to say what we're missing in dysfunctional families, it's this trust and intimacy, this relational, quiet relational piece. So home is a sensorial environment. What happens, the limbic system, how we process trauma. When we're very, very, very scared, the thinking part of the mind shuts down. This is for all ages. And the limbic system goes into high alert, right? So the feeling, sensing part of us is like this when we're scared, but the thinking part of us freezes. Because nature did not want to design us to be distracted by our thoughts if we're facing a charging elephant, right? Nature wanted us to run, to stand and fight, or to flee. So the thinking mind shuts down. It came on the evolutionary scene way later than the limbic system. The prefrontal cortex is a much later development. The limbic system is where our fight-flight is, where our survival apparatus is. When we get scared, we go into a high state of alert so that our muscles are flooded with blood, we're pumping adrenaline so that we can stand and fight or flee. When we can do neither, when we're a small child facing a large, drunk, out of control, abusive parent, which is what some of the things that constitute trauma in a home, we are compromised by our level of development. We are only able to make sense of it with the developmental equipment we have at any given age. Children are egocentric. If the parent says they're bad, they think I'm bad. If the parent says, if only you were different, I'd be fine. Children think, if only I were different, mom or dad would be fine. So they learn to shut down, and if they fight, right? Where are they going to get if they fight, these kids? They're going to lose. Where are they going to go if they flee? They're, in their footy pajamas with their, their $12, and they're going to have to come back. So they do what they can do. They freeze. They shut down. They find a way to stay here in body, and they take it like little beings, and they go somewhere else in their heads. So, this is why trauma can be so long-lasting. Because the children, first of all, aren't making sense of parts of it, partly because they can't, or they're making sense, but they're making immature sense, right? They're making child sense of it. And they have a loss of access to outside support, and there's this power imbalance. And it's a sensorial experience. So their limbic system is soaking it up. Later, when these children grow up and choose partners of their own, some of this material that got more or less frozen in place, some of these feelings that they didn't get a chance to feel because it wasn't safe, because it wasn't, there was no way to feel them at the time safely, or they never made sense of, so no one helped them understand them and put them into perspective because they were the ones causing them, which made it even less safe. It means that it was a double whammy for the child. They lost access to the very place they'd have gone to for comfort and to find out how scared they need to be or what's scaring them. That's the person scaring them. So it's a double whammy. It goes into the body. It stays in the body, but in an unconscious state, waiting for a trigger. In the same way as a soldier who's been traumatized by the sound of gunfire hits the ground when they hear a car backfiring, the child in the alcoholic or dysfunctional or abusive home hits the floor emotionally when their loud sound is fighting in the next room, a change in mood, a raised eyebrow, doubting eyes. Those relational scary cues that they learn to be hypervigilant around as children, they stay hypervigilant around as adults. But because they never made sense of why they were so scared to begin with, they do what? They project their fear into their adult relationships, into their next family. And they think that the fear they're feeling and the overreaction they're having to their husband, to their wives, to their children is all about their husband, wife, and children. And they forget how much of it got carried from the past and is getting re-stimulated and lived out here because they never understood it to begin with. So the ACOA, the child of dysfunction, does not know that they don't know. And they will defend their right to project their pain into their current circumstances because that's all they see. They want to blame it on something they can see. To complicate things even more, parents tend to improve oftentimes when the stress of childhood is over, right? These parents who may have been alcoholic or abusive or whatever might have gotten a little more relaxed over time. They might have gotten a little nicer. They might have gotten sober. So then these kids, when they become adults, really don't want to go back there because it jeopardizes the connection they have with the parents they now like and treat them well. Then the past becomes even more of a mystery. And there are loyalty issues, right? So this is what this book is about, essentially, step by step. What goes on with these children, how you get past it, what unconscious pain is. And this is why our model of working with it, this relationship trauma repair model, is experiential. because, let's let you stand up and become therapists. And, you know, how about it? Yeah, have you both become therapists? I'm an ACOA. I stood up and became a therapist. And so you're now experts in telling people about all this. And the pain, the unconscious pain, is carried in the body. And if we ask these now grown-up ACOAs to tell us about your trauma story, here's what can happen. They don't know what to say, right? Because they can't remember half of it. They never made sense of half of it. Half is so conservative. They never made sense of lots of it to begin with. They have loyalty issues about bringing it up. They don't want to feel it anyway because they shut it down because it hurts so much. So they do not want to go back there. When you ask them to go back there, they don't want to go back there. So what do? They make something sound like the last article they read or the thing their therapist is saying or you hear all of these, you feel like giving a checklist, which it's not really a very fair question to to we ACOAs, because we don't know how to answer it. And we are people pleasers, and we want to get it right, because we were ACOAs who had to be old and grown up too early. So we don't like questions we can't answer. So we'll give you an answer. But it might not be the answer that serves us best. My philosophy, experientially, is less is more. A tiny, tiny bit of remembering that's your own, that I haven't told you about, that you're not trying to please me, or I'm not making you codependent, like adopt me as a therapist, my story of what happened to you, worst case scenario, this happened, this happened, this happened, you should react like that. I don't want to take anybody's life away from them like that. I don't want to tell them how they should feel about something. I want to create a situation in which is a safe trigger so that the feeling comes back up and they get uncomfortable, but just uncomfortable enough so they can tolerate feeling it. And then we create stimulus so they can start putting words on their own feeling. And they learn about who they are. And then they tell somebody else about who they are. And then they'll listen to somebody else tell them about who they are. So we're developing the skills of emotional literacy, and we're creating a situation that invites the limbic system to become activated, but not overactivated. That's another problem. It can be an issue in psychodrama, that you get overactivated. And then, of course, it's embarrassing for the protagonist, it's embarrassing for the therapist, and you're trying to think, okay, and you worry about but that free state, that oftentimes in a large psychodrama, the protagonist, the person who's doing their work, will go right into the same inarticulate, what T.S. Eliot called inarticulate squads of emotion. I mean, that same dead spot, that same... And they'll freeze, and then that can be harder to get out of, right? That it's wonderful, experiential therapy is wonderful for getting people out of that, but this model that I've created that is makes use of psychodrama sociometry, J.L. Moreno's triadic system of psychodrama sociometry group psychotherapy, is really mostly based on sociometry, because it doesn't put people on the spot so much. And it creates a lot of autonomy, which obviously builds resilience. You'll see the rest of the time we're together, we'll do different parts of that model. But that's the thinking behind it, that I want to put as much healing as possible in the hands of the client. I want to let them be independent of me from the beginning. When I had my first child, the woman whose house we bought came over for a cup of tea to visit, and she looked at me with my little girl in my arms, and she said, "Start letting go now." And I really heard her. And in a sense, as therapists, it's kind of similar. You know, start letting go now. But I'm starting. But at the same time, I know that I need to, in order to let go, let you depend on me. Let you lean on me in healthy ways, because that's going to be part of becoming. It takes two to make one, right? It takes the parent close to the child to create the autonomy in the child. So the process that we're learning is a group process, so that personally I get scared being the only one. I'm an ACOA. So I've created this process that I can be one, but I can be with the group, because the group holds and the group heals. And I also, one beautiful Moranian concept is, in a group, each person becomes a therapeutic agent of the other. That's so lovely, because it takes the heat off the therapist. And we know perfectly well how fallible we are. What they might need, what you might need any given day, it might be just within the group. So I think that's enough intro. Let's get to it. If you want to just stay up here and help me put out feelings, I will. Do you all want to just put these around the floor, just around this area? Do you all want to do that? May I put your coat right so we don't slip on it?
We're passing these.
You're putting them on the floor. We're doing something, this model that I'm going to show you, let me hold it up so you know what you're doing. This is a relationship trauma repair model, for lack of a better name. It's really made up of sociodynamics. I really did it because somebody asked me to do it. I never really intended to do it. But now that I've done it, it's working out very well. This is a therapist guide. It has 8 units. And there's nothing magical about the units. It's just all the stages I witness people going through as they heal from trauma. It's trauma, it's grief, it's anger, it's sadness, it's forgiveness, it's balance, learning balance, it's that kind of thing. Each group exercise has a journaling exercise to go with it. So each client in a treatment facility ideally would have their own one of these, their own personal journal. And they would be able, after group or in their quiet time, to do the journaling exercises that correspond to the group exercises, so that they can process it a little more, so that they can use that good research on journaling, of bringing the thinking mind on board, because in journaling you free write, but it's limbic. You just let the pen lead you where you want to go, but the thinking mind slowly and without stress comes back on board and begins to make sense of it. That's healing for trauma, because that's what we want to do in trauma. We want to create as many ways as possible for the limbic system to wake up and the thinking mind to make sense of the feelings that the limbic system is experiencing. And if it's a safe vehicle, it happens the most easily. And journaling is safe. The research is great on it. It works. These are DVDs of just me doing this. They're of interest. They help train. Anyone can look at them. These are guided imageries. I've used guided imagery since I was in my 20s, and I like it. And I had the music composed so that it's soothing, and then I just walk people through, processing grief, processing anger, so that people have a chance to learn how to process an emotion, how to make it go from just this kind of confusing, intense, overwhelming thing to something that's conscious and can be reflected upon, and that develops mastery. It develops skills and mastery. It's simple. It's very simple. The model is basically composed of floor checks, which is you're seeing right now. Floor checks, timeline, spectrogram, empty chair, letter writing, and then empty chair. and then a V of balance. And that's basically it. You can do little psychodrama vignettes depending on your skill level, but you don't have to. The model can function fine without that. But the idea of repeating the same types of exercise with different criterion questions, you know, is so that the folks who are doing the model can internalize it, and it starts feeling like a safe container. And you don't have to be training them all the time what's going on. They can just start doing it. And pretty soon they do it without you. And that's, I mean, you're still there, obviously, but they just know what to do when they go there. And that builds skills. That builds skills that they can then transport out of treatment and into their own life. The reason I did a feeling check is everything I do, I bumped into by accident, but in New York State, all the budgets were cut. It's about 15, 20 years ago. And I had trainees coming in saying, we have 35 people in our group and people expect us to give them a therapeutic experience in treatment. And we were passing out at the idea that this was an expectation. But I thought, what about sociometry? Maybe there would be a way sociometrically to provide something. And I had been tired of feeling checks, you know. How are you? Excited, scared, happy, yeah. So I thought, why don't we have a little more fun with them? And it's turned into a lot of fun. This is one of the most used, everybody who does this uses this the next day. They use it all over the place. It's so easy to use. You can ask your own criterion questions. I have a list of questions in the model that I use, but there's nothing sacrosanct about them. The group can come up with the questions. So now, without further ado, come on up and walk over to a feeling you're experiencing right now and stand by it. We need a good group. Come on, come on, come on. Oh, to all of you, all of you. It doesn't have to be everybody, but we would like to see many of you. We'll bring this one over here, and there we go. We could handle 2 more people up here if you feel like it. If you've got 2 more. Yeah, just stand by a feeling you're experiencing right now. The other thing you notice with this model, you see these people, they're already having an experience. And we haven't even done it yet. But just standing up and doing this, and I put them through a bit of a sculpture and so forth, that's key to this model. It's key to experiential work, that we're concretizing something. We're getting the body in motion. When we ask people to think about and talk about their trauma, we're asking them to do something that's very difficult to do, to reflect on something they've never made sense of. But when we get the body moving, the body leads. The body remembers what the mind forgets. The body starts to wake up. So this is how it works. And what you're seeing is me doing very little. And you will continue to see me doing very little because you want the model to do the work. It's very easy. And you've got some energy by the end of the day. And the feeling is happening where it should be happening, in the person doing it, and not in me trying to get it to happen. So the instruction is just a sentence about why you're standing where you're standing. And I always say a sentence because this is very tempting for people to use this as a long sharing time. This is your clinical call, but I often work with large groups, and I've done it wrong so many times that I finally learned to just say a sentence about why you're standing where you're standing. And the good thing about that also is that it helps people to focus. It trains the skill of, what am I feeling? Let me articulate that. And I won't swim. So you're standing on other, I notice. And may I inquire what other stands for. We always have other in psychodrama because we assume we don't get all the feelings down or all the anything down. So,
Since I've been up here, I have experienced all of these, and I went into freeze mode. I can't choose one because there's so many. Oh, and then the last one I saw was other.
mm-hmm.
And that was it, Eureka, that was it. It was other. It was all of it and more.
So now what I would do is just, there are variations, and it doesn't usually happen this quickly, but you've been here for a while. So can we do a little walk and talk or a soliloquy for a moment?
Okay.
Okay,
She's so cute. Isn't she cute?
So cute. So nice.
I mean, this is home base. This is safe.
This is safe. This is home base. Limbically activated. I'm going to double.
Okay.
I'm awake inside. Something inside of me is waking up that's normally not awake. And did that feel good to me? And did I need that at that moment? Correct that if it's wrong.
You've been right since I've been up here, so we're...
Okay, so we'll just carry right along. Let's take a little, we'll mill around these feelings, and I'm going to ask you to do a soliloquy, just like your Hamlet,
Okay.
about why,
I feel shame,
okay?
because at this point in my life, this is all becoming very clear. And yet I feel ashamed that I felt like I should know this. I should have known this before. I should have. My children are struggling because I didn't teach them these skills, this understanding. So that's why I feel shame. Oh, this one, survival guilt. My family of origin have all died very young. One died from alcohol-related issues. Well, actually, let's say they all died from addiction-related issues. Sister died aspirating when she passed out. My father was an alcoholic, and he committed suicide. And my sister was 33, my father was 42, so they were extremely young. My mother, whose family lives forever and have no addiction problems, she died related to smoking, and she was only 53. And I'm about to outlive the rest of it. You know, I'm pushing that age right now, and I'm very healthy. And I'm feeling guilty for that.
And I notice as you say that, your body's trembling,
Yes.
which is what happens when the trauma starts to want to come out. So all we have to do is allow that shaking to happen.
And breathe.
And breathe. And if you feel like putting words on it, but you're putting words all over it. So just let's walk and talk and shake.
Okay, thank you. Disconnected. Oh, that's the easy way to do it. Just disconnect from the feelings, because I know when they get too intense, I get crazy, or people perceive me as crazy. And now I know it's not crazy, it's me doing my work. But I know that's when I have to learn to use cautiously. You know, observe, go into the experience, disconnect a little bit.
So what we're talking about here is some distance. The trauma thing is I'm black or white. It's a loss of neuromodulation, a loss of ability to regulate emotion. So what we're talking about here is a chosen pulling back, a chosen, I would call this even a chosen, it ceases to be such disconnection in my mind because you're aware you're doing it.
Yes, and that's...
The trauma way is to just disconnect.
Yeah.
Unconsciously. The conscious way is to say, I just have to pull back a little. And that's actually, though we don't learn it as ACOAs, normal.
Because we're therapists now, and so I went on to the therapy portion, and that's where I learned the skill is...
Okay.
And I understand it. It's a healthy thing.
Because in trauma, think we're fused or we're disengaged. We're enmeshed or we're disengaged.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Is this good? Do we want to keep walking, or is this good for now?
It makes sense for me. This is very clear.
Good for you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're welcome. Do you want to go back to that safe spot? Okay.
We're actually sitting next to each other too, so this started way before.
So this started way before. What you're noticing now is clustering. What we call that in sociometry is sociometric alignment. In other words, the people who are on, what is that one? Content are on content. The people who are on hopeful aren't hopeful. These aren't clustered, these are all different. But in sociometry, this clustering is very valuable because, again, I don't have to do anything. I can invite people, they're all content or they're all hopeful, and they can share with each other if the group's really large. But we can invite more people to share a sentence about why they're standing where they're standing. Anybody?
I thought this said excited.
Here you go.
I thought this said excited and it says exited.
Oh, no, I'm just a bad speller. It says excited.
Is it excited?
Yeah, it's a little ACOA left over.
So
I
thought it
can't
said
spell worth
exited.
it.
I thought it says exited, but I thought it was
I'm
excited.
really sorry.
Is it excited?
It is.
Oh, good.
It is.
So I'm at the right place.
How embarrassing. Yeah.
So I'm
Okay, so-
excited just to be here. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm here with my friends, and it feels good.
Okay.
I wanted to go to anxious because I thought I stood on the wrong way. So I thought I did something really bad. So we could talk about that.
Then I just, I know, we could do another, right. Thank you, that's very conscious. Anybody else, a sentence about why you're standing where you're standing?
I guess standing on content, I guess, because I've got lots of things going in my life and they're very stressful, but I really feel like it's kind of where it's supposed to be and kind of moving in a direction that's good. So overall, I'm just content.
Beautiful feeling. Anybody else? Yeah. Were you reaching over?
At first I saw lonely, and I'm not feeling lonely right now, but I know that keeps coming up for me in my trauma work. But I always come to hopeful, and I always feel hopeful inside, even when difficult things are going on. But I keep saying, okay, that keeps coming up. But anyway, but I'm hopeful because I'm working through it, and I love your program.
If you were to stand on lonely, would you like to do that and see what comes up?
Sure.
Okay. So what sentence comes up standing on lonely?
Lonely, what comes up is you're just like all the other adults in my life, and I know that comes from the childhood trauma, and it's been coming up lately, and I allow my body to feel the feelings, and I'm shaking now, and I know what it comes from, but that's what I'm working on right now.
So where do you feel the shaking most?
In my arms and my stomach.
So if your stomach, if you put a hand there, could say something, what would it say?
I'm not safe.
Another one? Do you want me to hold that so you can just shake that out? Just shake that. You don't have to hold
Consciously, I know I'm safe, but my body doesn't know that yet from the childhood experiences, and so I'm safe. I can become safe.
And how do you do that? How do you become safe? How do you get safe when you're in this spot?
I comfort myself. I pray. I don't isolate. Initially, I isolate, and then I try to look at others and serve, and then deal with my things that are coming up, thoughts and feelings, and journal.
And that isolation, one of the other things the model does is break the isolation in a very easy way, because depression and trauma isolation follows, yeah? So if this part of you, if your throat, because the feeling's moving up a little, if you put your hand right there on your throat, I'll hold this for you.
Okay.
What wants to come out, be said from there?
That's very interesting because I haven't had a voice for a long time, and a couple of years ago I made the goal to gain a voice,
Okay.
and it's been coming out more.
So what do you want to say now that you have one?
I have a say. I have control in my life, and I can be safe. I can be a safe adult, and a safe adult to myself and to others. And what I say matters, and I can make a difference. And I'm not going to be a victim anymore. So,
May I use you as a guinea pig for just a moment?
yes, absolutely.
Please observe how that went. The feeling woke up. It went all through the body. We let the Judy have a voice. We let the feeling have a voice. It was a simple process. We watched, we tracked it as it went up, and you saw Judy's body change. You saw her voice change, the sound of her voice change, the nature of her talking change, and that's just a little piece of healing. And that's trauma healing. And that done over and over and over again in a simple, easy way is a low impact healing. It's like low impact, we should call low impact healing, yeah?
Yeah, my legs are shaking like crazy.
Are
That's
they now,
okay. Yeah,
again?
Yeah,
Okay.
But it's okay. I'm seeing it, feeling it,
Yep.
knowing where it comes from. But
So the feeling gets big, it gets present, we become aware of it, it starts to regulate. And note how much the thinking regulates, understanding, experiencing it regulates. We think we can't survive feeling these feelings. That's where we get into trouble. Just learning that they're here and sitting with them and surviving them and putting words on them and saying them out loud and having all these good witnesses. That's trauma healing. It's going from the split-off affect into the present. It's going from disassociating the feeling to bringing it into the body and giving it words, life, and action. It's so simple. Yeah? Mm-hmm. You have anything to say before we move on?
a lot of times what has helped me is thinking about clients that I have worked with in the past that I didn't necessarily understand, and then I realized, oh, now I understand, and that people that I may work with in the future, to be blessed to work with them, and that helps me to get through things too, to feel the feelings and understand people better and have more empathy.
And when I
compassion.
grow, I think of who I can help grow.
Yeah.
And I learn from the people I help grow. And that's how we can stay in the field without burning out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and now we have clearly moved into the trauma work, but another question that is trauma related is sort of, what feeling do you not like to feel? What feeling when it comes up do you want to not feel? I hope I have enough feelings down here. If I don't, there's other. You want a sentence on that? Yep, for it. I'm standing on.
I'm standing on disconnected, and I experience shame when I feel disconnected.
That's again, that's the trauma thing. And why the simple act of connecting can be so helpful in healing, right? Because then you don't have to go into shame and a spiral and go down from there, and then, you know?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks. Yeah. Anybody else? Sentence about why you're standing where you're standing.
Excuse my voice, I'm a little bit hoarse today. I just left frustrated and so disconnected. They both seem to go together quite well. Excuse me.
It's all right. If you keep it nice and close, we'll pick it
Okay, that's fine. I've been in the social work field for 50 years, and would have to say that it's who I am. I found over all these years that many.
Can I ask you to this part is just to connect with the feeling that's going on inside of you, and it's with just disconnected. I'm standing on disconnected, and it was the question was the feeling you don't like to experience.
Yeah.
So, one nice sentence about why you don't like to experience that.
To be disconnected for me means that I can't finish the things that I so want to finish in my career.
Bingo. Thank you very much. I hope I cut you off? I hope not. I was using that as a little bit of a training because sometimes the feeling comes up and it's so unpleasant to feel. We want to go into our heads and tell a little bit of the story about the feeling first. I'm not saying you were doing that, but it was very convenient for me. Is that okay? Is that okay? Okay. Sentence about.
I'm standing on frustrated. I guess that goes back to my childhood when
We need you to be. Now part of the healing is also to help people speak up and embody it and hold the role. So take the stage.
Frustrated for me is being a child and when my father was angry, and so when I feel frustrated, I feel like I'm being like him.
So I'm going to ask you to say that all over again, and I'm going to tell you why. Because, is this okay that I'm doing this kind of thing? When we say what's really hard to say, especially in that child place, we swallow it, right? And sometimes it's healing just to have to say it 2 or 3 times, because I can see how it's coming up, and see if I can give you the opportunity to say it again one more time, just so we can all hear it. You're doing a beautiful job.
When I get frustrated, I feel like I'm turning into my father, who was a very mean and cruel person, and was frustrated all the time.
And if your father were here and you could say something to him, what would it say if you just want to say a sentence to him? Without thinking about it.
There's too many things to I think I would say I'm not you.
Okay.
And I have made myself better.
Tell him.
I'm not you. And I've made myself better despite what you've done to me.
Thank you. Anybody else? Sentence about why you're standing where you're standing. One more.
I chose triggered. What triggered means to me is emotionally it's unpredictable. Unpredictable. I don't know what's going to come from it, so it's very scary.
So I'm going to double. I haven't shown you doubling yet, but doubling is standing behind someone and speaking what may not be spoken from the conscious role or offering any kind of clarification. It's entirely about the person you're doubling for, not about me. It should not be my drama. It should be, I'm in here in service of the protagonist, the person speaking. So may I say, when I get triggered, that chaos that I felt as a child starts looming, and I finish the sentence? If it doesn't feel right to you, don't even dismiss me completely. Just don't even pay attention. But does that feel right to you?
No.
Okay, you make it your own. You make it your own. When I get triggered.
When I get triggered, I feel that things may go out of control. that I feel unsafe.
Because things may fly out of control.
Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, let's do one other thing so you see another thing that we can do. We've helped people connect with their own stories. Walk over to somebody who said something that moved you or touched you. Place your hand on their shoulder and tell them what it was. Now this is sociometry. This is resilience building. It's learning to share, learning to identify. It's the relational becomes relational. It's choice making. One of the things that happens in trauma is that we start to lose our ability to make choices. So the model asks people to make these choices, choose where you are, choose where you are, Now this is interesting sociometrically speaking because we have two connecting groups. To decode this sociometrically, we have a mutual pair. You're choosing each other. This is a good setup for psychodrama. Not that we're going to do it, but this would be. We have a mutual pair. The more mutual pairs there are in a group, the higher level of group cohesion. Into this pair, we have 1, 2, 3 people choosing Cassandra. We have how many people choosing Lynn? 1. We have. Are you choosing Lynn? She's worried. She's trying to be thoughtful in where she puts her hand. Are you choosing Cassandra? You're choosing both, but in sociometry, we choose one.
She's a rule breaker.
And you know, it is tough because they're choosing each other, but I'm going to stick to the rules because it's training. Which choice are you making?
First.
Okay, so 3 choosing Cassandra. We have 1, 2 choosing Lynn, but because there's another pair, but because Judy, you're choosing Lynn. Because Judy is choosing Lynn and you are choosing Judy, Lynn's choosing Cassandra has all this extra group energy going towards it. Now, are you all choosing anybody?
I'm choosing him.
Okay, and you're choosing Cassandra. So we would need to ask you to come over and place your hand on Cassandra so we can actually see the choice. And then you would go over there. You see, you have to concretize it so you can just see what's going on. So these are your group dynamics for this question. And there's more Cassandra choice. Okay, so there's a lot of choice around here and going here. Were we to have a protagonist in this group, we would want to, if we did deep work here, we would have a lot of group support for it because a lot of people are choosing here. So if we listen, this is how psychodrama and sociometry work. If we listen to Cassandra's or the Lynn's work, these people are going to have a high level of identification with it. So that's important healing for the whole group. And then after they do the role play, we do a lot of sharing. So the people choosing have a chance to share what came up for them. Not feedback, but this is what your drama brought back to me from my own life. And even when we don't do that process, we do it internally. That identification is happening internally. So the basics of the model are these floor checks, spectrograms, timelines, letter writing, reading the letter, journaling, and guided imagery. These are the basics of the model, and you're getting a sense of how these pieces interact to do little bits of healing. Can I ask you all to bring your attention up? Thanks. Now, what I'm going to show you now is a spectrogram. And this is one you can use anywhere and everywhere. I mean, this is a very user-friendly sociometric exercise because you can gauge it for any group. You can gauge it for any level. You can gauge it for any situation. So I highly recommend the spectrogram. I've used it, I want to say thousands of times in so many different situations. And it's just a safe, good thing. It's essentially a graph on the floor. It's a how much, how little. So that helps, from the trauma perspective, that helps to understand the degree of feeling. That's one of the things that happens in trauma is we lose track, we lose our ability to understand how much we're feeling. Because we did so much shutting down and then going straight from that shutdown place to this high res place. Or that's not right, high res. High, what would it be? High noise, high intensity. So going from shutting down to this high intensity. That's such a trauma kind of a thing, a part of the loss of neuromodulation. So a lot of the work we're doing is just learning how to understand how much we're feeling, when we're feeling, what we're feeling, how to translate it into words, how to share it, how to listen to it, how to soothe it. It's not really complicated, and it's not so much about getting just the right interpretation, or just, I think there's been so much focus on the abuse. Were you abused? How much were you abused? How did the abuse happen? How old were you? How old? And I really think it takes us away from the core of trauma treatment. The abuse matters, but the same thing can happen to all kinds of different people and have different effects. What we need to help people with is the reactions they have inside of them and what they do. And that is so dependent on the age they were, the developmental level, the equipment they had, their own biological makeup, their place in the family, their socioeconomic situation. And by the way, more isn't better on that one. I mean, wealth can be very isolating. And the wealthy person can also kind of own a piece of everybody in the child's environment so that the child can be really, really isolated. Children who have access to to neighborhoods, to churches, to synagogues, to places to go, are really better off, I think. So there's so many factors that go into how we experience, why we experience that. I think focusing in on just the abuse is not where we need to spend our time. And it also can create a whole new layer of shoulds that we carry out of treatment or out of wherever, thinking, well, I had this, so I should feel this and I should feel that. And sometimes you were abused and you got over it, or sometimes somebody in your environment really helped you with it, or sometimes being ignored is one of the hardest things to treat. Nobody knows how to talk about it. They felt unseen. They don't even know how to put words in it. They think they're crazy because, after all, nobody hit them or sexually abused them, or, So I think the model seeks to get away from those kinds of labels and just put people in circumstances that promote healing and right-sizing emotion that they're not right-sizing, so people can take charge of themselves and can just begin to live from a more comfortable place. It's really skill building. It's skill building. So the spectrogram, the way I use it most easily is I put 100% here, 0% there. Imagine a line going right here, and this is about a 50% mark. So we ask then criterion questions about anything and ask people to locate themselves according to the answer of that question. Now that again gets people up and out of their seats, depending on what subject we can talk about any subject. How comfortable are you in group? How comfortable are you being in treatment? And just get people talking about it in an unthreatening way and a non-projecting way. The model doesn't encourage you to look across the room and make somebody else the reason for why you're uncomfortable. It doesn't flow that way as much. But for today, for right now, should we just do criterion questions that surround trauma and grief? How much do you feel that see here, I'm getting caught in my own words because I want to say the trauma you experienced in childhood. But what I really mean when I say that is the unresolved pain you carry from childhood. How much do you feel that affects your relationships today? I feel it affects it very much, 100%, very little, 0%, 50%. I'd like to invite anybody who wishes to come and stand where they feel the answer to that question is.
Change day by day.
It can. And we're going to do it for how you feel today. Come on up, come on up. Come on. We need, here's 50%. We need some more people. More? That's 100? Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get a few so we get a couple more. Okay. We have a real representation. So there you go. So I'm going to ask the question you'll hear all the time in psychodrama and sociometry, who's warmed up to say something? And the reason we do that in psychodrama, ask for warm-up, is because it makes the work so much easier. We don't want to put people in the position to have to talk when they're not, when they're cool. So, but we don't want to miss a warm-up. If they're warmed up, that means 2/3 of the work is done. They just need to put it into words. And then again, that's a translatable, portable skill. You start to understand, I'm warmed up for, what am I warmed up to make for lunch? What am I warmed up to do? Go to a movie or just take a walk in nature? And you learn about your own warm-up. And you learn about your children's warm-up. And you learn about how kids need 5 minutes to understand they have to leave a situation. And you learn how to warm them up for what their warm-up is to go to school. You know, what do they need? Do they need to have a couple of cell phones off for just things? Personally, I write a lot, and I like to write when I'm warmed up. But it turns out I've written so much that I know my warm-up. I wake up in the morning and I'm warmed up because I have a habit in place. I wake up, I get a cup of tea, and I'm warmed up. So you learn about your own warm-up, and that's a very valuable thing to know in life. So I am standing on who's warmed up. Just put your hand out, and I'll walk over with the mic. Yes. I'm standing on?
I'm standing on 50. Why I'm standing on the other, I'm just, so what you're saying, okay, the question was.
Oh, let me be clear about that. And I did so much talking, I don't even remember.
I'm in my own body and head, so I forgot.
Yeah, and I was over there.
Imagine that, huh?
Imagine. So the question was, how much do you feel this unresolved pain from childhood? Because we're calling it unresolved, which is why we're working to resolve it, and this is how it looks to resolve it. Simple process. How much do you feel that unresolved pain from childhood affects your relationships today?
Today?
Today.
Can I be a little bit closer to you then?
We're edging up to 55?
I'm getting, actually, today, this last couple days, I'm getting good. I'm getting much better.
Okay, well, that's 100%. This is 50.
That's 100?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm going to be over here then.
Okay, so it affects me about 55%. Is that, I'm sorry,
50 to 60. We're good because it's somewhere I can't nail it, but we're in the over the 50 and under the 80, 75.
Okay, there we go. See, it just takes, and if you could tell us why you're at that 75 level.
Because I have just recently learned
You project really well, but let's put it close anyway.
Okay. I'm learning how to put words to the feelings and the senses and what I'm experiencing in my body. And it is now opening up my relationships. It's amazing how much I can get support and even ask for it, which was the harder part. Because I'm working through this.
Thank you. Anybody else?
It's interesting that you picked a higher number because it's affecting you in a good way. I'm like 85, 90, I don't know. I've done a lot of work in my past. I'm a social worker and I work with clients, but I just started a round of equine therapy to kind of see if there's any stuff under there that I need to work on, and it's just stirred all kinds of stuff up for me. And that's one of my concerns as a therapist is I know I need to do my own work so I stay clear, so I'm not projecting or doing anything funny with transference, but it's like it stirs so much stuff up. So one of the things that's done for me is given me a greater level of empathy for my clients who come into me and the point at which they're going, okay, oh my God, I need help. And I think that's a really positive thing. So, but it's really affecting, like my husband's great, he's really supportive, but it affects my relationship with my children, with, I don't have a lot of friends in my life. I haven't established a good support group around me, and so I'm kind of looking at that, why I kind of distance people still, even though I've done a lot of work on myself, so.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Here to see. I wanted to say 100% initially because my body feels that, but cognitively I was saying, okay, maybe 95% is more realistic. But I'm doing my own work, and a lot of the trauma is coming up because I'm feeling safer, and but I have the thoughts that come up that what's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. And then my mind goes, no, there's not. And you're great, but I recognize that my body from trauma in childhood believes that. And so I allow myself to feel the feelings. But it's very much alive and coming out now, and I'm recognizing things that I did not recognize before. So.
Would you be up for doing a tiny little role play, and would you guys be up for hanging around while we do that?
Sure.
Because we're talking here about, well, you could hang on to that, actually. We're talking here about, you notice I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. I'm going with what people give me. But you said something like the child in you does one thing and then the adult in you reminds her. And this is one of the most important dialogues in trauma work we can get going. Because oftentimes the child, well, let's first start by look around the room and who could play your child self?
My child self.
Your inner child, your child self, whatever. Take your time.
Girl in the green sweater. There's two people I see, but
you can choose more than one. That's the beauty of psychodrama.
There's the girl with the blue scarf.
Okay. So we're having two child selves.
Hopefully I don't have a split personality, but
From the psychodrama point of view, we have many parts of ourselves. Yeah. Let's move this right up here a little bit, and I'm going to ask you in psychodrama we have these different things we can do: reverse roles and double. You've seen double. Now you'll see reverse roles. Reverse roles with one child self and show us how she's standing. Actually physically change places with her.
Okay. So right now, should I put them in a place that, okay.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
the age
First,
that they would be.
You're right on it. Put them in a place, give them their age, all that stuff.
I might pick someone else too for, Shelley, can you come up?
I have a lot of children inside of me, and that has nothing to do with that, just as being, we all
And
do.
I was trying to be funny before, and it wasn't very funny, but, So she's you, Shelley, are me up until age 3. Yes. The healthy, determined little girl that could conquer anything and let's see. I'm not sure what your ages are, but let's put you.
Well, if I could double there, I would say I remember you now. And you were healthy and you could conquer anything. And things got kind of fuzzier after. What happened with her after age 3? What happened?
Trauma and abuse that most people don't know about. And
Do you feel comfortable saying it?
sure. Not sure. I don't want to say too much. You know, I mean, I'm comfortable doing that,
you
but
know
I don't
what?
want to take up too much
A
time.
word or two is more than enough, just so I can track you. We can track you.
Severe terror and horror comes up as a child, and I dissociated when we were on vacations as a child, and other things that happened with people, with relatives. In addition to that, one was a stranger,
Okay.
and it affected me in
And
that.
Can you say the incident? Just the word of the incident?
Like as far as like sexual abuse,
Yeah,
violence.
Just so sexual abuse and violence in nature.
Yes,
Okay.
that I dissociated from and didn't know. I had shut down, and a lot of that is coming out now.
And it created a before and an after in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You created life before that trauma and after that trauma, and I'm assuming it never got processed.
Correct.
So that because I never could understand it and right-size it and process it, life went from being in color to being in black and white. There was a before and an after. Correct that if it's wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
True.
Okay.
And I started to not feel safe and become a people pleaser and could never be angry. Other people could be angry, but I couldn't. And I did not feel like I could go to adults in my life because with the exception of one, but the others I was like, they weren't safe or they would laugh or not believe me. So the real me couldn't come out. So I played my role.
So I created a false self.
Yeah.
A false self functioning. I functioned from a false self because my real self wasn't acceptable anywhere. Correct that?
Yes, it was not good enough, so I was going to please everyone and be the good, perfect little girl. Perfect, yep. Brother, sister, yep. And so, and so instead of being the vibrant determined little girl, I still had that determination, but I was very timid and inside myself and afraid to come out.
Okay, so, and did she have a nickname or did she have what was she called?
My mom used to call me Joodle Noodle, so that's...
So is this fair to say this is Joodle Noodle?
Sure.
Okay, what do you want to say to Joodle Noodle?
I love you, Joodle Noodle, and you've always been alive inside of me and have never given up, and you're coming out now when it's safe to come out. You're becoming the real you, the authentic you.
Reverse roles? Reverse roles, physically change places. Give her that last line. You're coming out when it's safe to come out. Because you're her adult self now.
Oh, so you want me to repeat back to her what she
Just
said?
the last line.
It's safe now, so you're coming out.
Okay, Joodle Noodle, what do you want to say to the adult part of you? Can I ask you to just stand right over here just so we can see you?
But I'm scared. I'm really scared. And sometimes I get petrified and terrified. And then I remember that it's okay, you're safe. And
Tell her why you're scared, Joodle Noodle. So she really
someone will
understands.
hurt me. And there will be no one to talk with, no one to protect me, no one to believe me.
I'm scared
And I will
it'll
be-
happen, yeah. all over again, just the way it happened when I was little. That if I share what's really in my heart, nobody could possibly be there, and I'll get laughed at and misunderstood and not believed and made fun of.
And I will be blamed.
And I will be blamed. And I will feel
invisible, not heard, not good enough, insignificant.
okay. Reverse roles. And how about these other two parts?
They're the precious, more timid. You are the more precious, timid self of me, but also the all of you are very empathetic and very love people and love life. There's just the fear that's getting in the way of being able to be your true self or my true self.
So how do they fit in with Joodle Noodle, and do they have different names?
Still Joodle Noodle, but also Judith Ann. Judith Ann, get down here. When I was in trouble, I was Judith Ann.
And I felt like a different kid when I was in trouble. Correct that if it's wrong.
Yes, I felt like I was always in trouble, or if I opened my mouth and had a voice, I would be in trouble. So I was quiet a lot of times and didn't say things. I was afraid to speak.
Who's Judith Ann?
Judith Ann.
So what do you want to say to Judith Ann?
Judith Ann, I love you and you're safe. It's okay. It's okay. You don't have to be scared anymore. You're loved, and it's okay to be you, and it's okay to say things. If people get angry, that's okay. That's their stuff, not yours.
Well, can Judith Ann start learning how to say them to you? So that, because sometimes when, I'm assuming, like so many often happens in the situation, is that this part of us starts talking to the world from that in-pain, traumatized place, from that unprocessed place. And then that part of us gets upset and frustrated when nobody understands us or wants to listen to us or wants to push us away, because when we just talk from this unprocessed role, the world maybe gets a little busy. So can we develop this relationship? So when Judith Ann is in that mood, that feeling upset, she can talk to the adult part of you, and you can help her understand it and translate it into words, and you can kind of start figuring out how to best go about getting your needs met, how to best go about sharing it, and so forth.
Yeah.
See, often we talk to the world from this place in us instead of this place in us, and then we get really sad and upset, and we think nobody understands me, and nobody wants me. Okay. What do you think? Can we make that bargain?
Sure.
In your own words.
Well, it's interesting. I started going into this worry that what if my, family members see this and they get upset with me or are taking on blame and don't understand other things that happened. So yeah. So I started worrying like, oh my gosh. So I started leaving the scene for a minute.
Is that...
Started worrying.
Who's this part? Is this part the part that leaves the scene, or did the adult part leave the scene?
Oh, no, she is the part that left the scene, but I didn't recognize it before.
Talk to her.
I didn't know who she was yet.
Talk to her.
So is it Sophie? Sophie, when it gets...
She's
Sophie.
you.
Oh, okay, sorry, Sophie.
That's okay. You're doing it beautifully.
Yeah.
There's no perfect on this one. You're doing it beautifully. But is she Judith Ann? Is she Joodle Noodle? Is she...
She's invisible.
She's invisible. You're invisible. You don't quite have a name like Judy Noodle, Judith Noodle, or Judith Ann. You're just you kind of don't have such a name that comes to mind. Talk to her.
You're really the very inner core of me that gets very hurt when I don't feel seen or heard and I'm invisible. I feel invisible to those around me, and I want to run and hide and cry and not let people see that I'm hurting inside. And then the grown-up in me helps me through that, but the invisible, terrorized core in me is the one that suffers the most.
Let's reverse roles. Physically change places and just give her her last line. The terrified core in me suffers the most.
I'm sorry, I had a moment there when I was listening to you, so.
Did she say what's coming up for her?
Personally? No. You're here in service of the, yeah.
Right.
And you don't have to take care of her. And I made a mistake. I walked over there, and my walking over was just enough for you to feel you had to take over and take care of everybody, right? Because you're a good ACOA overfunctioner, and you saw somebody in need, and you popped out of your own drama, and it's my fault because I walked over and I didn't let you know. I'm sorry. I just had to get a scarf. But I should have told you.
I wasn't sure for training, can we bring that out if somebody actually run your read afterwards? But
It was my therapist part who was coming out as I was listening to you.
And your job as a training is simply to embody the invisible part of Judith Ann, Judith Noodle. You're the invisible part, and you just give her her last line so she can continue with her drama. And you hold that role as the invisible.
I have a name.
Oh.
Casper, which happens to be my married name. And I love Casper the Friendly Ghost, so you're Casper.
Yeah.
And you're invisible, but you're very friendly and lovely. And
you have shapes sometimes. Because Casper goes all over and has a cute shape sometimes.
And people can see him sometimes and they get scared. Yeah. And other times they're happy with Casper.
Sometimes Casper scares people.
and Casper doesn't mean to scare them, but oh my gosh.
Sometimes. It's okay to scare people sometimes if they're scared.
And help comfort them, help them through it. But hey, you know what? I'm not as scary as you think I am.
Say that again.
I'm not as scary as you think I am.
Again.
I'm not as scary as you think I am.
I'm just scared. See, here, where that thing broke apart, I got really scared, and then I thought I was scary, and it got all kind of mushed together. Correct that if it's wrong. When I'm here, I feel scared and scary. Don't wear it if it doesn't feel right. I'm just trying it out.
I think maybe it's more scary to me. I know sometimes people are afraid for their own reasons. But we're getting out of the feelings.
Yeah,
we're into the cognitive.
Yeah, really.
So.
And when we start to get into the head, what are you feeling besides my mistake of walking away without telling you? But we can use it. It's a great empathic failure. We can use it. What did it stir up in you?
When you walked away?
Yeah.
I didn't realize until you said now that, I didn't even go there. I didn't recognize because I was cognitively thinking, how would we do this with the clients?
And how would we do this with the therapist? Gone.
But when you say that, I really didn't feel at the time when you walked away And I went to your training last year, so I have a relationship with you. You have built a rapport with me. But
Thank you for
so
that. Thank God for that.
Yeah.
Or it might have been worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that I have the issues coming up right now that say you're just like all the other adults in my life. I didn't feel that, but I'm wondering when you say the empathic failure, that thought comes in, oh yeah, there have been, that comes up with adults for me.
Yeah.
And even if they've been there for me most of the time, I'll still say that. And then my head will say, well, that's not fair. They're there for you most of the time. Yes, but that's what you're feeling right now, and feel it and see where it goes and why you're doing that. And it's okay to feel that way.
And
but I'm
when
not
I
really
open
feeling
up,
that
I
way with you.
understand totally. When I open up, we're just using me. We're not, when I open up, somebody's going to walk away. That's how it happens for me. I open up, I let myself be vulnerable in this place, and even Tian walks away and, has some personal need and doesn't tell me, and I'm left here managing all my inner selves that I've splatted out around the stage. And so I got to start taking care of you and you and you and me last. But I have to manage this, and it doesn't take much, that trigger, right? It's actually quite beautiful that it happens so we can get an opportunity to see how little it takes to trigger us back to that place. Not that this is little, but, and completely unintentional on my part, completely based on my own need to warm my throat, might just forget. So it's just one of those things.
And I feel safe to tell you if that was occurring. I don't feel it occurring, but I'm sure that maybe on the subconscious level, because it came out that, wow, yeah, when she says that, that has happened in the past. So but I don't feel it right now.
And that's the other confusing thing, is that I'm reading it because I saw it in action.
Okay.
And when we have an experiential method, we can see things in action, because that's what happens when we get triggered. We don't feel it. We just swing into action.
We don't recognize it, yeah.
We get triggered. We don't like what it brings up. We swing into action and start caretaking or getting angry or whatever we do. And in this case, it's just a little piece of turning into the adult again and pushing down and all those things that we always do. Huh?
Yep.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So from the invisible, who now has a name, Casper, what would you like to say to your adult self?
Casper, you don't have to be invisible anymore. And you can have a shape and form all the time. You don't have to go into hiding and become invisible. And if people don't accept you or don't understand you, that's okay. You let them have that. But you can still accept you and be safe in your own skin, in your own body, in your own feelings and thoughts and whole being of who you are. An amazing, wonderful person that's not invisible, that's never been invisible. Just some people just don't get it.
Reverse.
Always.
Okay. Reverse roles. And you can hang on to that. Because this is how we integrate fragmented parts of ourselves. Trauma, this moment of trauma causes fragmentation. And that pain, we lose our ability to walk into, we lose our ability to feel and think at the same time. It becomes too threatening. And if some adult doesn't help us get ourselves back, then this happens. We start to fragment. And it's normal, and it's a normal response to trauma. It's natural. And this, concretizing parts and talking about it and just deconstructing it, helps us to integrate. And you noticed, you don't have to be invisible anymore. You don't have to. So you're just integrating split off parts of self. As the adult, what do you want to do here to wrap this scene up?
Okay, I want, I want you guys to hug each other, but then I want to be a part of it too. Not sure if it should be done in two separate things where you guys hug each other first and then we all hug, or I hug you individually first.
You're the boss.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to hug you individually first. Judith Ann, you're awesome. Casper, you're rockin' awesome. Joodle Noodle, you're alive and well. And coming out full force. You've always been there. Now, I want all three of you to hug yourselves and become one with each other and love each other. And now I'm going to come in the middle. I'm going to come in the middle and have you guys hug me, press all those beings into me. Oh, wonderful experiences and learning.
So good to have you back.
Great to have you back. And now I'm going to come out and we'll hug each other. Thank you. That's awesome.
So we are on the spectrogram. Why don't we want to just stick around and we'll move right into the timeline? Does that sound cool? Okay. The spectrogram is how much, how little. That I had it here. Here we go. How much, how little. The timeline is kind of a user-friendly way of putting out. You can hold it for a minute. Do you want somebody else? Do you like holding it?
Yeah, sure.
10, 15, 20. Would you mind just putting out the rest of them while I explain it? Thanks. So this is a timeline. I call it the trauma timeline. I've called it a lot of other things over the years, but I find it's easiest to just call it the trauma timeline. In the journaling book, you can do it on paper first. You can invite clients to do the journaling exercise on paper and then share it in group. And that's a little farther, a little more space in there. Just a thanks. Then you just share. And what you generally see with the timeline, not to give away the end of the story, but people start to realize, gosh, I had a lot of trauma in here. It was in big clusters in my life. Not so much there, more there. They get surprises when things occurred. And another thing, and gee, the trauma from here got recreated here, and then I kept doing it here, and I kept doing it there, and I'm still doing it. Is what often. So you start to see the reenactment patterns, the recreation patterns, and where they stem from. So you can start to piece it together, and these splits start to reveal themselves, the before and after the trauma, because we want to be able to link who we were before, and sometimes there is no before and after. In this case, there is a clear before and after. Sometimes there's no before and after. Sometimes somebody's timeline is, I was recently working with a woman who's second-generation Holocaust survivor. She said, my timeline's all over there with the people I never got to know. Yesterday, or the day before yesterday, somebody did a timeline and he talked to his future self. So you can go all sorts of places with it. But just for the moment, and anybody else who feels like it, come up and join us. Walk to a place on the, and one more variation before we do that. You can also do a timeline of use, walk the timeline on your own and say, I hear there was some trauma around age 10 and I started stealing candy from the local store and I just was hiding in dark rooms and eating ice cream, watching TV, and then about 11 I found beer and this was happening, and Then 15, it started to turn into alcohol, a lot of alcohol. So somebody can start to trace their use and how it connects with what was happening in their lives. So you can use it in a variety of ways. But just for the moment, because we're doing a group process, we're going to use it sociometrically and invite anyone who wishes to stand in a place on the timeline where you feel you might still have a little work to do, a little unresolved stuff you'd like to work with. Feel free. Are you all standing where you mean to be standing, or are you thinking? You're still looking. Okay, take your time. It's a process. So now we can find that microphone. Thank you. And you notice there's clustering around certain ages. There's a lot of clustering at early ages. If we wanted to do this as a group process, and I didn't ask for people to share one at a time, we could simply share with the people standing next to you why you're standing where you're standing. And then you've got all the babies sharing together, the 3-year-old sharing together, the 10-year-old sharing together, the 20-year-olds, the teenagers sharing together, the young adults sharing together, so they have something special to give each other because they're each hurting in the same sociometric spot. So that's another option. But how about a sentence about why you're standing where you're standing? Who's warmed up? You were warmed up. Okay, look at.
My grandfather died when I was 14, and I was abused by my parents, and when I went to my grandparents' house, they never touched me. So that was my safe space. And I was raped when I was 15, so the combination of the two. And my mother, when my grandpa died, I was really upset. I was very attached to him, and she's like, "You can't cry around Grandma, you'll upset her." So I remember stuffing all the hurt over losing that safe place for me. And it took me about 10 years, but it just didn't come up for me all the time. But for some reason, it's really heavy today.
So all the events that, if I heard correctly, my parents died?
My parents abused me, and my grandfather died, and grandparents' house was safe for me.
Okay, so I lost my safe space.
Yeah.
And I got raped at the same time. And I lost a safe place to even if I didn't talk about it, I lost a safe place to be with it so I could maybe feel some of it. And then when I was mourning, my grandmother was told not to, yeah? Is that it?
I was told not to cry around her, to not upset her. And in the process of dealing with the rape, my parents made me go through court, and there was no emotional support. I cried myself to sleep every night, and they left me alone in my room, and no therapist, and it was really ugly.
So this is a timeline. It focuses the work. Do you need anything right now, or does it feel sufficient to have said it for the moment? And
I just want to curl up and cry.
feel free. Do you want anybody curling up with you, or do you want to just curl up and... How do you want to curl up and cry? Okay. Do you want any support around you?
Yes.
Do you want to choose that support? Do you want that support to choose you? Okay. If you feel like supporting while Our protagonist just curls up and cries. Just help her by supporting her. Let it go. Let it happen. Just let it come. If anybody has a Kleenex. That'll work. Oh, thanks. Let all the sound out. Let it all out. Let the sound out. Let it all out. Do you want a holding? Do you want a little more feeling of holding? Would that be helpful? Is that okay? Yeah, okay. Let her just lean into you. Let the sound come from way in your body. Let the 15-year-old cry.
I don't feel sad, I feel angry.
Okay. Let's get angry. Do you want to get angry at anybody in particular?
Angry at my parents.
Okay, do you want to...
They're leaving me alone.
Okay.
I can't do this alone.
Again.
I can't do this alone.
Again,
I
loud.
can't do this alone.
Again.
I can't do this alone.
This... Say it as loud as you want to say it.
I can't do this alone.
Scream it.
I can't do this alone.
Angry.
I hate you for leaving me alone.
Again.
I hate you for leaving me alone. I can't do this by myself. I don't know what to do.
Do you need to collapse even more? Can I double for you? Doing this alone made me collapse inside. I went to this trauma place of collapse and rage. Both. And I got stuck here. Correct that if it's wrong? I don't know how to get out. When I get into this place, it's a collapsed place, and I'm enraged and collapsed, and I don't know how to get out. I get frozen in this place.
I don't know how to do my life this way.
I don't know how to do my life this way because when I get into this place, it feels like this is my whole life. It takes me over. I get completely overwhelmed.
Where were you? Why did you leave me here?
Say that again.
Why did you leave me here alone?
Do you need to talk to your parents and reverse roles, or should we just reverse roles here on stage and find out? Let's stand up, because that's the burning question. Why did you leave me here alone? Okay. Let's reverse roles, and you become your parents. And just, as your parents, answer that question. Why did you leave me here alone? You're now you're standing in your parents' role. Do you need people to hold those roles for you, or is this sufficient?
I need someone.
To play yourself?
To be my parents.
Okay. Okay, then we're going to reverse you back into yourself. I'm not ready to reverse roles into my parents. I'm still too stuck in my own pain and collapse. Look around the room and choose someone to play your parents. And choose your father. You can say no, you can say yes. Yes, okay. Okay, what do you want to say?
I want to know why you left me alone. Why you let me cry myself to sleep alone every night.
Tell them why you think they left you alone, the meaning you made out of it at the time.
I just don't think that you care at all that I'm dying like this. You won't come for me. You never help me do this. Just make me go through this stupid court stuff and I don't care. I'm so scared. And you don't talk to me and you made me go to the doctor and you didn't explain to me what they were going to do to me and you are just so damn busy with your lives that you don't care. And how could I cry myself to sleep every night? And I know you hear me. I know you hear me. Why don't you come?
You made me feel as if there was no way out of this place. No one to help me out of this place. Correct that if it's wrong.
It was so dark and
It's so dark
I'm so scared
and so scary.
and I don't know what to do.
And I don't know what to do. And you're not helping me.
I don't understand. I would never do that to anyone. I would
Again.
never leave them alone like
Again.
that. I would never leave them alone. How
Again.
could you do that to me?
Again. Let the indignance out.
How dare you? Walk away. I'm your daughter. How dare you leave me alone? If you didn't know how to help me, you should have found someone, anyone who could be there.
You made me feel like, and I'm still feeling it, because every time I get into this place,
I don't matter to you.
that's the sense I made out of this, that I don't matter to you. Because I can be dying inside, and you don't even come in and ask what's wrong. When you have all this evidence.
And you brag to people about how great I am, and I don't want to do anything great for you anymore.
Is that the 15-year-old speaking? Who is saying that? You at your current age, your 15-year-old, the whole thing?
The whole thing.
The whole thing. You brag to people how great I am, but
You don't have that right.
you don't have that right.
You don't deserve that.
You don't deserve that. If I'm great, I got here on my own. I got here.
You don't get to take credit
You don't get to take credit.
for all the work that I do. You can't have it.
You can't.
I won't give it to you.
I won't give it to you. This is where the dialogue stops for me. I'm caught between a rock and a hard place here. Correct that if it's wrong. But
I do things in my life all the time to sabotage my success because I refuse to give it to you. And I suffer still, and it's your fault.
I so don't want to make you look good that I don't let myself do my best. Or correct that if it's wrong.
And I'm still there,
And I'm still here.
just stuck
Just
where
stuck
you left me,
where you left me.
alone in the dark.
Alone in the dark. I'm stuck alone in the dark where you left me.
I hate you so bad.
I hate you for this so bad. You were the people I needed to come to for comfort, so it all just got in a big pile. I had to go through this. The trial made it worse. The rape was terrible. The trial was terrible. And I would have gone to you for comfort, and you just kept ignoring me. So I just get into this place, and I can't find my way out.
And then you moved me. You moved me away from everybody that I trusted, everybody that I knew, and blamed me. You blamed me. You blamed me for your dad leaving his favorite job. Oh my gosh, how dare you? Like I asked for it?
So not only did I get raped and traumatized, but you blamed me for losing your favorite job and for having to move. I didn't ask for this. None of us did. Reverse roles? With mom or dad, what do you think? Or are they just a unit in your head?
Mom.
Okay. Okay. What do you want to say? Mom, back to your daughter.
I wish you could believe that I'm sorry.
Why didn't you say it in a way that helps her believe it? Because I noticed none of you look at each other in the eyes. You all talk to each other looking at the floor. Mom, why didn't you make this apology so she can feel it?
I have no excuse. I failed you.
We need to hear what you're saying. We can't tell your words now.
I have no excuse for not being there for you. I was selfish. I was too worried about your dad going and hunting him down. And I did. I made him call the police because I knew he would go after him. And I was more concerned about that than about what you needed. And I was completely selfish.
I was traumatized. I'm your mother. I froze with you to some extent. Correct this if it's wrong. I'm just checking it out. I was much more traumatized by this than you knew. I had a complete failure to protect you. You're my daughter. I couldn't protect you from this. I had a husband who I thought was going to go out and get himself in jail. I was frantic. I was beside myself.
Don't know how to get past that. And it's petty, and I'm sorry. I just don't know what to do with it.
There are a lot of parts of myself I don't know what to do with. I did resent the attention, and it was complicated from this end, quite complicated. And I'm sorry.
And I didn't really know where to turn. I wasn't really taught by my mother to know how to comfort you.
These weren't skills I walked into parenting with. And I didn't grow up in an age where people learned it was okay to feel things and share and all that. I just didn't know. I didn't have them. And I couldn't give what I didn't have. Today, I'm sorry for what I didn't know yesterday. Correct that if it's wrong, Mom, or put it in your own words.
I just desperately wanted whoever did that to you to pay.
Because I felt like I'd failed in my role of protecting you. And watching you hurt like that made me desperately want somebody to pay. I just didn't know what to do to beyond that.
And I don't talk to you about it because it makes me feel inferior as a parent. I know that I failed.
It makes me feel I fail, inferior. It makes it very real. I was taught to ignore things that hurt, not talk about them. And my life was in chaos. You ready to reverse back, Mom, and we're going to end the scene for now? Is that all right? Is there anything else you want to say from the mom role?
I want you to understand that even though I wasn't capable of showing it in the ways that you needed comfort in so many different parts of your life, I just want you to know that even though I was not able to physically comfort you, didn't understand how to do that, that I do love you. I care about what happens in your life. I want you to be connected to me.
And tell her why it's so hard to say this, Mom.
I'm afraid if I tell you how much I want you in my life, that you will reject me like I rejected you.
Reverse roles. Okay, we're gonna put some closure on this scene for now, if that's okay. And one of the parts of putting closure is in these final things you say. One of the things that happens with sexual abuse of various kinds, we lose our voice. We lose our standing up and articulating. So I'm going to ask you, to the best of your ability, to say the last things you want to say to your mom and dad for now. Standing up straight, projecting your voice, and having your words clear so you know they're going to get heard. And I'll hold the mic for you.
I know that you would like for me to just let it pass.
Look right in the eye.
To just forget what you did or didn't do. But I'm not there yet. And I don't know when I will be or if I will be. I can't be responsible for how you feel about what you did or didn't do. But I've got to figure out a way to move my life forward, regardless of how I think that's going to be used by you to feel okay about yourself as my parents.
I'm going to take the risk of succeeding, even if it makes you look good. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Because I deserve better than I've ever been able to have in my life because of you. So I'm not going to fix this for you. I'm not going to make you feel better about what you did for me, because I need to take care of myself, because you didn't do that.
Is that an okay place to leave it for now? Okay, so let's move back onto the timeline. And thank you to our role players. You can stay up and join the timeline or sit down. Okay, so we have, well, we probably should do some sharing now because we're getting near our end of time. So we've had a couple of protagonists emerge. Did we have one, two? We had, you did a little bit of work. The sharing in psychodrama is for your continued healing, because this process brings stuff up for everybody in the room. It's not feedback, and it's not advice. And if you give feedback or advice, I will very gently track you back onto sharing what comes up for you, because it's so you don't walk out of the room with what got brought up to here. This is part of the group process. So I'm going to ask our whoever was a protagonist to just sit on the edge of that little stage. And invite everybody else to have a seat who's on the timeline. Would you consider yourself having done a bit of work, or do you want to?
For me or for her? For her?
No, for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Oh.
Have a seat. Have a seat. So what we'll do here is invite, can we pick it up from in here? Can we pick it up? If we can, we see faces in here if we need to? Okay. So just share from where you are. Share with whomever you got warmed up to share with. And if you played a role, please de-roll. Say, I'm not your father, I'm so-and-so, but playing your father I felt, and then shed the role. And then say, from my own life, it brought up. Okay, are the instructions clear enough? Okay, and then just pass it from person to person if you would.
I'm Sharon. I'm not your mother, but when I was standing in the role of your mother, I thought of all the things my mother should have said to me and all the things I wish I could say to her. So my heart went out to you, and it went out to the little child in me as well. It's interesting for me to answer myself from my mother's point of view of why she didn't take care of me, what chaos and turmoil she was going through. I had more empathy for her, and I had less empathy for her, more selfishness. But it's real interesting to stand in that role because I thought about me, my life.
I want to thank you so much because you really clarified something for me, which is that I put myself at 21 years of age with my father's very
Who are you talking to?
I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Melanie?
Okay.
Melanie, I want to thank you so much because you clarified for me. I put myself on the timeline at 21, which was my father's premature death at age 47. On a world trip with his mistress, so that was quite a trauma. However, when you were talking as the 15-year-old crying herself to sleep every night, I realized I should have put myself in that, really, because that age range, because I was crying myself to sleep every night because my mother was slowly going into major depressive disorder with psychotic features, and my father was starting to sleep with other women at that time. So that was really when I should have put myself there, and I thank you for taking me to where I should have put myself, because that was really the source age for me. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody? Yep, just walk over and, yeah.
I think I took a piece of all of you when you were walking around talking about your feelings.
A little closer, maybe? Yeah.
I just, I kind of felt that. I remembered what it was like to feel those things and when I felt those things. And when you were having your children hug each other and talk to each other, I kind of felt like I could sense that and think of parts of myself that reminded me of. I also had a very similar experience when I was 16 that you had when you were 15. And for me, it was a little different. My grandfather was dying, and when we told him, he said he wanted to die because he didn't want to deal with it. So I just think I felt something from all of you.
He didn't want to deal with what?
The fact that that my cousin had tried to rape me.
Anything else you want to share?
I'm good.
Okay for now? Thank you. Anybody else?
Melanie. I could share very deeply with the idea of a child that didn't have a parent's support. And my father would abuse me, throw me down the stairs, beat me. My mother would just turn her face away, just simply not be present, and there was nowhere to go. And a lot had to do with the position that she and my father had in the community, the status that they needed to uphold. And I could truly identify with, where do I go? I used to cry myself to sleep in the closet. I'd put a pillow over my head because if my father heard, he would come in and bang down the door. Thank you.
Judy, I'm not Casper, but when I played that part of you, what came up for me is that all those different parts are all beautiful and worthwhile. So thank you.
Anything from your own life?
That's the part I'm in right now, is identifying all these parts and being so very grateful for them.
Thanks.
Thank you.
In watching this, I just reminded again what lost, wounded children most of our parents were and my parents were, and I feel inspired again to forgive them because there was no technology to bring them out of it or heal it. And I'm glad to live in a time where there is more technology to heal it, but I feel a deeper forgiveness for my own parents watching you do the work you did today. So thank you.
I feel very privileged. Last year during our circ reunion, I was able to do it was a good hour and a half psychodrama with Tian, and I will never forget that. And it had a lot to do with my role as a mother and as a drug addict and alcoholic, and how my children were going to be affected in the future by that. And and so I was so excited to come to this again. And as I sit and I watch this, I looked at my timeline and I could see these things, and as I related to Judy, and my trauma also began at a very, very young age, at the age of 1, and went through about age 15, and that part of my trauma, I guess I should say. Drug abuse alone brings a lot of trauma into our lives. And then looking from age where I stood on there was age 15 with Melanie, and I had a hard time picking where to be, because there was a lot of trauma at certain times, but I truly feel very resolved in so many things today. Going back to that age hit me that was a very unresolved period of my life, when during 15 to 20, when my eating disorder started, when my drug abuse started, and on and on. But as I watched Melanie today, I do remember that my parents, and I believe this today, my mom had no skills to ever deal with any of my stuff. Neither did my father. We didn't talk about things. That's just all there was to it. They still don't. And I also know today that even my uncle, my abuser, did what he learned. He just kept on moving. Doesn't give him an excuse. It just is what it is. What I know today, and this is what, honestly, as I watch all three of you women, is that I pray for every day in the lives of others, is that those of us, and especially me as a mother, I know today I've got to move out of this stuff in order to be what I need to be for her. And she's only 16, and she gets to come with me to this stuff because we talk about it. We talk about it. We do it in our lives today. The psychodrama I got to do last year with Tian was about this, and I'm going to stand up and do it today. And now that I've become a substance abuse counselor and moving on to becoming a therapist, I want to be the healthiest that I can be. It doesn't mean I won't be triggered at times. I know it's going to happen. Things come up. I've got stuff I'm dealing with right now that I haven't dealt with in a long time, and it came out of the blue, and it's okay. But so thank you for being vulnerable, putting yourselves out there. I did it last year. It was amazing. I had people at the reunion this year come up and go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that was so cool." And it was cool to me, but it was just part of putting it away, kind of, for me too. So anyway, just super neat opportunity to watch and relate to all of this stuff.
Is that a good note to, should I do a little wrapping up, and then we'll be, is this okay for you? Have you had enough sharing for, yeah? Okay. Did everybody de-roll who needs to de-roll? And anybody, any more needs in the group? Okay, thanks. Have a seat. Thank you. So, this is, just to wrap it up, this went where you let it go. This is a group process, and you all held it, and it teaches, each one teach one. It's sociometric. It's like a, part of it's like a live theatrical. It's a concretizing, it's a ritual, it's a role play. And I would just say, from the training perspective, to just Let it be simple. Less is more. Not to push anything. Work with what's emerging. Our job as therapists is always to follow the lead of the protagonist. Listen and follow, listen and follow, listen and follow. No agendas, no prescripting, no ideas of where that person should go or where you want them to go. Just be with them where they are. Actually, it's a very Zen process in that way. And the more you can be in the present with the protagonist, with what's getting warmed up and coming up through the process, the more they can just heal without being re-traumatized. Because we're not pushing them somewhere. Are there any questions you want to ask before we wrap up? Yes.
I just have a comment. I put when I stood up there regarding the percentage line, when it was 100 and 0 in terms of what we felt was the current effects on our lives from childhood trauma, well, from any kind of trauma earlier on, I was standing in a certain place, I was below the 50%, and then when you put the numbers out for the timetable, it was at my age, which was 60, so I thought that really affected me somehow. I don't even know what it is, and I'm going to think about it, but to me, it was like, and then until the psychodrama happened, then I became involved with that, but I was really sort of blown away that you happened to put the 60 when I just turned 60, and that's where I had placed myself for the other thing. So to me, there was an interesting juxtaposition of the two lines.
So thank you. I think that's a good example of the process working. We don't know how it's working, and that's not our part of the job. Our part of the job is to listen and follow, to listen to what's coming up, to follow it, to give it space, to concretize it. What you're seeing here is concretization. And please never underestimate the power of concretization. Just saying, who could play your father? Who could play your mother? What would you like to say to them? It doesn't have to be some huge thing. The simple act of doing that and saying something and reversing roles and then standing in their shoes and experiencing yourself through their eyes and experiencing them through their own eyes. The method itself has the healing built into it. The sociometry that I've used as warm-ups and such a central part of the model is the research I've done over the years. It's psychoeducational from an experiential point of view. I love the psychoeducational aspect of the addictions field. It's so respectful. It gives the client the knowledge so that they can piece together their own world, as you were just doing there. You were piecing it together. You're all piecing it together. I think giving people that kind of information and then creating a safe situation. And remember, it's safe enough. It's never 100% safe, because this stuff triggers stuff. But if you just keep the container safe enough, you can feel it and move through it. And part of keeping it safe enough is for me to move slowly, to stay with the program, to not have agendas, and to not have places you have in mind that people should go, to not have a grid or a map in your head, because everybody's map is their own. And we have no business in there. Our business is to listen and follow. So you've been a beautiful group. Thank you very much. Thank you to our role players. Thank you to our protagonists. Thank you to the group. And I have never done this in my life. Thank you to me.